But thanks everyone for coming. We got a good panel on PPC, retargeting, social, and affiliate. And I think based on some of the conversations we had yesterday about if you decide to build out some of your domains, what are ways that you can effectively and efficiently drive traffic to them? So we've got a great bunch of people here to talk about that and talk about the different ways that might make sense for you to test out driving traffic to your domains that you build out. So let me introduce our panelists. We've got Jay Weintraub here to the left of me. He heads up the company that runs and develops and promotes the LeadsCon summits that you may have heard of. They attract thousands and thousands of people each year to their conferences in New York and Vegas. Prior to founding that and Next Customer, Jay was part of actually the founding management team at Oversee. So he definitely has roots with Oversee and the domain industry. And he spent 2.5 years at advertising.com, where he created a product where they monetized undersold inventory. He speaks a lot and talks a lot about customer acquisition, so it'll be a great addition to our panel. Then we have Peter Hamilton from Has Offers. He's actually done a lot of work in the performance marketing space, working with clients such as Zynga, Beachmint, SEO Moz, and Sears, as well as done work with the affiliate space. At Has Offers, him and his partners have launched a new platform that brings in and attributes mobile app installs and in-app events back to publisher sources. So Peter has expertise in the whole gamut from SEO to PPC, display, and he'll be lending kind of his thoughts on how you could leverage some of those channels. Next to him we have Mary Morud, who specializes in social advertising. We heard about that yesterday about the rise of mobile and the rise of social, and Mary specializes in, she says, full contact Facebook advertising. So we'll talk a little bit about what that is and doing a lot of deep kind of psychographic research and how that affects and how you use that to bring in targeted customers and traffic. So for those of you who haven't had as much exposure to social media advertising, she can definitely talk about how it's growing as a advertising medium. And then we have Adam Epstein at the far end there. Adam is the president and COO of Ad Marketplace. He's been there since 2003 and pretty much handles everything, day-to-day business operations. Prior to that, he was an entrepreneur as well. He launched fancast.com. And then in a previous life, Adam had clerked for a U.S. District Court judge and was an attorney. So I think with this panel, we'll just jump right in. And I think we'll just tackle each of these channels. And we'll start with maybe PPC with you, Jay. So I think most people in the room have some familiarity with PPC and how you use it potentially from a keyword or an arbitrage perspective. But what would be some initial tips you would give people looking to build out their domain? Again, let's just say something exoticflowers.com or something like that, and they want to drive traffic through PPC and SEM. How should a domainer get started looking at that?
I'm still thinking about Superman and the splat, by the way. Is it some metaphor for our discussion today?
No, I wish it was.
Well, I guess the easiest way to answer is by asking the audience a question. Is there anyone in this room that has not yet set up an AdWords account and run search for anything?
There he is in the back.
There he is in the back. Anyone else that has not actually set up an AdWords account? I have nothing. I think they know how. No, okay. But I mean, I guess I don't mean to say it so flippantly. I guess when we look at the world of customer acquisition and we look at where people tend to run into problems, and Peter, I hope you'll jump in here too, that the most successful companies, they all have a very specific funnel in mind of what they're trying to do, and they have a very clear metric that they're trying to hit. And anytime you're doing paid media, since it is an actual cost, your entire goal then is to figure out your lifetime value and to figure out sort of your metrics all the way throughout. And if you don't have those, then you absolutely just shouldn't be running. So I'd say before thinking about, there's this great tool for keyword expansion, or your number one thing that you need to know is actually going to be CTR on your ads, because it really is probably the one most important thing you hear of the guys who are really good at search is that you get one chance to make a great first impression. And so if you're going to do it, you're really focusing on making your ads as clickable as possible. But outside of those things, it's really a business model question before it is a particular traffic channel one.
Got it. And so I know you might have some comments on that as well.
I completely agree with that. PPC can be really, really valuable when it's in the right context and when there's relevance and when those kinds of ads actually connect to the types of users that you're looking for and get them to do the kinds of things that you want them to do. Obviously, enterprise level software that costs $10,000 a month, it's going to be difficult for you to get a lot of user acquisition through pay-per-click. But I think especially in the domaining sphere, it really depends on what it is you're trying to do. I know a lot of you guys are maybe doing lead generation campaigns. If that's the case, definitely search relevance is very high. In certain niches, especially that maybe not are oversaturated yet, there are still some little gold mines there where you can start to develop lead gen. If you're really looking for just mass users to the site, and more DAUs, daily active users to the site, it can get really expensive to try to do it with PPC. I think that there are plenty of other more remnant sources that you can use for that kind of development of a domain. But yeah, I think Jay's exactly right that you have to really figure out, is the context right for the kind of business that I'm trying to build?
And I think if we followed up on that point, it's a question of how big is your business going to be? Raj, I mean, you guys, I know you probably can't share the number, but it's huge, millions of dollars a year on paid search probably in Oversea. And so when you think about if you're going to do millions of dollars a year as your target and you're going to have millions of keywords, then it's a very specific set of tools. If you're probably going to spend anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 a month on search, Google has great tools all of their own. You don't need to go, hire an agency. It really is sort of, so I think part of it too is thinking about your threshold, and then it's what life cycle your business is in, because chances are the first X, and it probably differs if you have an item that's, let's say you're doing flowers and your average order, you're looking at your average order basket is $50, and you're saying, okay, if it's $50, your first, probably several $1,000s of spend is going to be horribly unprofitable. So I think the other thing too is just to get ready for this curve where it's going to be really expensive, really expensive, really expensive, really expensive, and then as you figure it out, then it'll start to sort of dip down. But definitely don't expect that a trial budget of a couple $100s is going to be all you need, and you can sort of step back.
Adam, what about you? I mean, you obviously, they've mentioned AdWords and other things, but there's potentially other sources. What would be your thoughts on, hey, are there other cost-effective ways to drive kind of paid advertising?
Sure. Well, I think it's interesting. Everybody in the room is familiar with search and Google, and we all know that search is the most effective form of advertising ever invented, and Google obviously has a monopoly position in that space, which is why nobody raised their hand when the question was asked, have you not used Google? So it's the first topic that we discussed in this kind of panel, because obviously it's where you need to start when you're talking about driving user intent, relevant traffic to your website. So the question then becomes, when it does get expensive, if you do need to drive the volume, what can you do with Google? Having an understanding of your own metrics is very important. Using those metrics to optimize is obviously very important. Your ability to share those metrics with Google, though, is where this monopoly issue really comes into play, because we work with really the 350 largest Google spenders who almost to the brand has a policy against sharing their back-end conversion metrics with the monopoly player in the space because of their ability to set pricing. We take a little bit of a different tact. When you talk about search, you need to know that there's search engine result pages, and then there's a search partner network. Those are two very different things. And when we talk about monetization, you actually might be part of that search partner network, and it's a great way to make a lot of money. We can get to that in a moment. But from a traffic acquisition standpoint, it's also a place where you can find some lower cost traffic. Now, buyer beware. There are different varying degrees of user intent, varying degrees of conversion rates. So you need to be careful in the way you optimize that traffic. And unfortunately, Google does not allow you to break out the search partner network into individual traffic sources. They have a one check box. You're either in or out of the search partner network. So a couple of the search partner network competitors, like at Marketplace, for instance, have taken a little bit of a different approach, and we actually break out every partner in our network for advertisers to bid separately. And while that's interesting, what's more interesting is that what we really rely on to do that is the data, the performance data back from our advertising partners, which they're able to share with us and able to change their policy or make an exception, because we're not a monopoly, right? We're the small guy, and if we can get 10 or 15% of their traffic from an alternative source, they've really brought down their overall cost of search, or they've expanded their volume and their reach, and they've done it at a positive ROI. So our approach is full transparency and using performance data that actually matters to the advertiser's end goals, marrying those two things together to find results in a search. And it's been working very well.
So let's shift gears a little bit from PPC and talk about other advertising mediums that people may not have used as much. And one is, looking at display advertising, but, talking to Mary, let's look at, since social has been talked about a lot today and, this morning with Kim as well, social media people look at, previously, getting likes and so on, but now it's coming at its own as a marketing channel. But I guess the question people may have is it an effective way to drive traffic or customer acquisition for sites that may, like for example, sites that you're trying to get conversions or transactions, or is it mainly still a marketing channel for branding? Now, can you talk a little bit about how you see potentially, social media advertising playing into what domainers could do for sites that they're looking to monetize?
Sure. So I'll ask the question similar to Jay's. How many of you have a Facebook ads account? So you can access this by logging into your Facebook account and going to facebook.com/advertising. You can have a bunch of different business accounts and then manage them under your, umbrella of your own personal account, which is really helpful. Especially, I work at an agency. I manage a lot of different brands. Facebook advertising is awesome for branding, but it's also great for direct response, lead gen. We've done all of the above. So, Facebook, I don't know, they have like 1 billion users, right? It's half the internet. People log on to their Facebook, 4 times a day, spend 20 minutes on it each time. Sometimes they just hang out there all day. So if you're a brand, growing your brand, use Facebook ads as a branding initiative, because you can get your brand with an image in front of these people's faces every day, all day. And if you have a strict branding ad that has no call to action and you bid on a CPC basis, so cost per click, you can basically get free branding impressions, and only the really interested people are going to click through to your site. On the other side, you can do direct response. We've been very successful in that, even in B2B. I know people think Facebook is all about consumers, B2C, and LinkedIn is more B2B. Not so. We pioneered, B2B ad serving in Facebook. We use job titles in the precise interest. You can target people based on workplaces. Facebook's targeting has got really, really awesome. In the past couple of years, they have broad categories. So a couple of the broad categories would be real estate, people who are looking for vehicles, people who like to travel, right? So if you're a site that aggregates, Travelocity or Priceline, that's a great market for you. The other cool thing about these broad categories, and again, it's like finance, real estate, technology early adopters. When you couple the broad category, so these categories of people, with precise interests, it uses an and operator instead of or. So if you type in a whole bunch of precise interests, the operator within that variable is going to be they like Lady Gaga or they like Kim Kardashian, right, to be relevant. But when you do precise interests with broad categories, it acts as an and operator. So you can target people who like real estate and they like Rolexes, Awesome. So, and like, sure, you can sell them Rolex, but you can also sell them BMWs, travel. You know, don't think of it as just one-to-one, but think of all the different people who are going to buy your product and what they would say about themselves on Facebook. That's the secret to Facebook targeting. What kinds of people are you going to brand to?
What sort of, like, for people in here, when you're looking at comparing costs, you know, people might know AdWords and CPCs and that, and maybe even know some other ones. Would you say costs are comparable on Facebook? You know, CPCs are comparable. Are they more? Are they less? Is it kind of run the gamut?
Of course, it depends on the vertical.
Yeah.
But for the most part, Facebook is dirt cheap, like cents, like literally cents per click, or you know, maybe $1.50. Like we said, we use it a lot for B2B. So in those spaces, you know, if we don't have a huge budget for AdWords, we'll bring it into Facebook, test messaging, you know, test concepts in Facebook before we bring it to AdWords, because, you know, the AdWords CPC might be $50 or might be $75, where in Facebook that CPC is $1.20.
Got it.
Hey, Mary, if you don't mind, like what's a B2B campaign that you've run that's actually worked?
We do a lot of lead gen from the B2B aspect. Sometimes, do you want like a specific
Yeah, I was just
client?
trying to think of like
Okay, so
selling oil rigs or, I mean.
So, well, we've sold everything from oscilloscopes, which I'm not even quite sure how they work or what exactly they are, but I know who to sell them to and what to say. And then we've also done, you know, conference signups. We've done, you know, like library RFID chips to librarians, like dental adhesives to dentists.
Got it. Wow.
I think it's pretty interesting, the keyword versus audience. So I guess if
Right.
someone's going to get an oscilloscope, then you're thinking about what are all the keywords around an oscilloscope. Anyone own an oscilloscope domain name in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then versus, you know, like, I don't know what targeting you did for oscilloscopes. Probably not Rolexes, I guess.
It's kind of a warped mind up here. But so, and that's the other thing when it comes to Facebook targeting. We're also used to search and being literal and the intent. And there's also definitely intent in Facebook as well, especially with job titles. So it's really about taking the product and understanding who uses it, like really understanding them. So what's their job title? What conferences do they go to? What publications do they read? All that kind of stuff. Other online, you know, social gathering places, forums, that kind of stuff.
So,
I mean, it really seems like the two things that differentiate any kind of display advertising or even, you know, pay-per-click advertising is, you know, who is it that we're targeting and what is the medium that we're using. Obviously, Facebook, it's almost like the targeting is the medium, and they're experimenting with how it's going to look to us over time. They came out with something new today, actually, a new display size, which they're testing out across the United States. But yeah, I think that, you know, Facebook is great for targeting a certain type of user in a certain place where they're kind of in a leisure experience. I think you're seeing the ad network world in general explode because of mobile, because of the ways that we can target users on their devices in these certain day-parted experiences. So you see big mobile ad networks jumping into mobile ad mediums, jumping into display within mobile apps, display within mobile web applications. But I mean, again, it kind of all goes back to this original concept of what is the relevance of this type of advertising to the type of user I'm trying to attack or get to convert, and how is this going to, you know, really influence them to make a decision. So.
Right, and Facebook is really, I wouldn't necessarily say a starting point, but it is lower level for us. It's, you know, somewhere we go to find the customer or the target, and then like there's so many things that you can do from that. So let's say you have like a really, you know, specific targeting segment, you know, and then, you know, housewives who live in the suburbs and they, you know, love e-news and like every show on E, right? So Kim Kardashian could then, select that target market very specifically, serve them ads on Facebook for Shoe Dazzle, right? They'll click on the ad, tag the URL, they're brought to her site, then you cookie them. So then when you place the specific cookie on that user from that psychographic segment, you can then follow that user knowing exactly who they are or who they present themselves to be on Facebook. And you can follow them around the internet with very specific ads.
Definitely. So on that, since we are talking about kind of retargeting, so that may be a concept to talk a little bit about. Maybe Adam, if you can talk a little bit about that as well as, how effective is retargeting as a user acquisition method? So,
Sure.
Hey, a user came to the domain and now you want to serve them an ad somewhere else where they're on the web. How would someone get started kind of looking at whether or not to even attack?
Right, yeah, there's several different types of retargeting. So it's a word that is being used to apply to a lot of different methodologies. The first is the one that Mary talked about, where somebody's visited a particular site and you want to then go find them again on the internet. I think if any of you have ever been to Zappos and looked at a pair of shoes, you notice very quickly what retargeting is when you go into your Yahoo Mail or any other sort of news entertainment site and you see the exact pair of shoes you just looked at. It's great for me. I can always see what kind of shoes my wife will be wearing in about a week because I see what she was just looking at on Zappos when I got on her computer. And that's site-based cookie retargeting. We're doing a little bit of a different model, which might actually apply more to domainers who have a little bit more difficulty with targeting. We have a network that has 100 million users that we get user intent from on a monthly basis. So even if you're not generating a ton of user intent through keyword searches or content on your site, if we've seen the user somewhere else put in a keyword, we can then go ahead and match ads to that user when they're on your site. And that's a great way for a publisher to make a lot more money, especially as we get into mobile, which is often in apps, which are often difficult to find targeting against. And also, just general interest sites. It's a way that we've been really able to bump up yields for publishers. So I think retargeting is fantastic for both publishers and advertisers because it does allow for a broader experience and higher eCPMs. So at the end of the day, that's a good thing.
Do you consider that to be more like cross-targeting than retargeting, or like how do you?
Yeah, I think we've played with a couple of different names. We always go back to retargeting because that's the one word that everybody seems to talk about. But
it's because people understand that that's a persistent cookie, and so that retargeting that like makes sense.
Right.
To them?
Yeah. We sort of call it enhanced user matching.
And
when you don't have a good way to match a user, we'll sort of help you with your matching.
And Adam, you're talking about from a publisher monetization level. So I have a site, put your cookie on my site, and when you are able to use my data for another advertiser's targeting, I get paid? Is that what
That's the standard retargeting model. That's a Criteo model. That's not something we actually do much of. We do something else where if you're a publisher and you're generating user intent, we'll capture that user intent, assign it to the user, and then follow that user around and show them ads. And just like when users come to your site, we'll fill out your ad response with targeting from other places. So it's sort of like an exchange of data that's done very seamlessly. Yeah.
And again, on that, just to get down to kind of the tactical stuff, when we're looking at order of magnitude in terms of comparing it to acquiring the user for the first time or something, are we looking at much higher cost involved in retargeting? Is it usually about the same, or would you say that on order of magnitude wise they're around the same?
I'd say if it's really the retargeting, re-engagement kind of sort of idea, then and it's through Facebook or through your own site or something like that, where you're literally trying to bring users back. I mean, most people will pay a lot of money for that.
But I think it's cheap.
Right.
I think on a net, the amount you would buy this. So if you went to buy an impression on an ad network, and they might quote you, $1 CPM or something for run of network, and if you were buying an impression for a retargeted ad, it's really, really expensive compared to a run of network. But everything I've heard from people is that it's cheaper when you look at the actual cost benefit to you. So if you're looking at it on an actual conversion basis, that is the best cost per conversion, but you're going to pay a lot for that impression initially. So there's probably some initial sticker shock, but on a value basis, it's worth it.
Yeah,
That's
and,
exactly
and you're talking about lower cost inventory. So you're talking about this run of network untargeted. That's why it's really publisher friendly, because they're taking otherwise low CPM inventory and getting a nice little lift on it, where there's enough value created, the advertiser is getting a deal, and the ad network can take a margin on it and still do well. So when we're using technology to better target ads, it's hopefully a win-win-win where the advertiser's finding that the ROI backs out, the publisher's finding they're getting a higher CPM, and the ad network's getting a little something for the trouble.
I mean, you both do retargeting, Facebook and off Facebook retargeting. How many visitors do you think a domain has to have or a site has to have before it becomes relevant or not? Look, if you're going to get 100 visitors a month, you don't need to do retargeting because they can't find them again. Is there a threshold you've seen?
Well, I know for FBX, they advise, websites to have about, in the six figures to
On a
make it really worth it.
Monthly basis?
Yep.
One point of caution, a pitfall here would be audience retargeting is a very nebulous term. And you'll have some ad networks that will say, oh, no, we're totally giving you that audience that you're looking for. I think that's probably a little bit sure when you're on Facebook, when you can be a little bit more confident that you're actually getting the audience you're looking for. It's also been a way, everybody likes to make a dollar. So, some display networks have used audience as a way to sell their RON traffic without adding a whole lot of value there. So, at the end of the day, I think you need to be, and this is really where we started the conversation, very metrics focused, very, DR focused, and making sure that, whatever you're paying for the click is backing out for you on the back end.
So one channel we haven't covered yet, and maybe I can throw this over to you, Peter, is affiliate marketing. And so when we're looking at affiliate marketing, it definitely can be a valuable acquisition channel that has a good ROI, but there's a lot of options out there, and some of them may be more complex to set up. Everything from a commission junction to a pepper jam. How should this audience look at evaluating that as, hey, I want to sign up for some affiliates? Are there, if they're domains in certain verticals, does it make sense for them? Are there some that have more scale than others? How do you look at that?
If you don't know anything about affiliate marketing, then I highly suggest signing up for several networks and just trying some campaigns out so that you can just wrap your head around how the actual business operates. It's really easy. It's just one person has a relationship with another person and they're promoting them for a kickback, and that's all there is to it. It's like as old as time. It's completely relationship based, and all a network really does is help you manage all those relationships. So a network may have hundreds of thousands of affiliates that have all different kinds of traffic. They have, hopefully categorized a lot of that traffic and targeted a lot of it out so that they can make sure you dive in and get close to, what it is that you're looking for quickly. And you can do well with certain affiliate networks, Commission Junction, Link Share, Google Affiliate Network. I mean, there's lots of these that are very reputable. They're not gonna, just try to take your money. But be careful. If there's high setup fees and you're a legitimate company and there's high setup fees, then that's usually a worry. And you make sure that it's an organization that gives you a real account manager, someone that you can talk to, a real person on a regular basis. Once you've kind of gotten started into it, you'll start to understand how these relationships work and how they develop, and you might start developing some of your own. I mean, you guys, especially domainers, you guys have relationships. You probably have some traffic you might want to share back and forth. Well, all affiliate marketing is doing that on a action basis of some kind. So you're willing to pay another person for every lead you acquire or for some other engagement that happens on your domain. What Has Offers does is help facilitate that just as a tracking mechanism. People have built their own tracking mechanisms to do that, where you're tracking the conversions or tracking whatever engagement points there are, and then determining, how much does this, the person buying, owe the person selling. That's really the basic concept there. And I think that if people start to think about it in a more relational way and less of a masses of kids in their boxer shorts, hacking away, buying media kind of way, then you'll see the industry continues to lift and improve. We're seeing really large brands invest in performance-based campaigns these days where they want to see engagement. It's really interesting, like we're working with Square on a mobile campaign, and they have terrible conversion rates, just absolutely horrible, because their conversion rate is when an actual merchant signs up and creates an account. But how much is that worth to Square? And how many clicks will they blow through to get there? Well, if Square can set up a relationship with one of their advertising partners where they pay out for every merchant account, like they'll pay them $250, $500, like whatever it is to acquire the user, and then it's on you, it's on the publisher to figure out how to get the right user in there to make a conversion. And I really believe that that is how it should be. The advertiser, whoever it is that's buying, should be able to set the parameters on what it is that they're trying to achieve, and the publisher should make it happen.
You know, I'd like to add on to what Peter said about the affiliate world, where I think when you think about it, as if you're going on as an advertiser, it gets back to one of the things that I will harp on in terms of figuring out what you have to pay. So I think if you have never done a campaign like this before, I would sign up as a publisher and snoop through the networks to see what are my competitors or what others sort of offering, because it's not a liquid marketplace like Google where a click is sort of worth an amount and you bid what you want and you see. But it's a little slower than that, but it's almost equivalent, where it is how much you pay will impact how many publishers will actually run your offer. But more generally to the affiliate space, I think there's just sort of two types of networks. There's going to be those where you have very clear transparency, and it's like a permission base. So a publisher wants to run your offer, they will request permission, and you can decide yay or nay. You have very kind of clear sense of what's happening with your brand out there, whereas there are other ones where it's absolutely the opposite. So I think you need to sort of know what kind of business you want. Are you comfortable with anyone running it? You just want to make money. You essentially have let's say you have let's pick an example that's not highbrow, like a nutraceutical product. You've got formulated a cheap herbal weight loss product. You don't really care who runs it. You just want to see some subscriptions because you just want the rebills to happen. So I think, when I think about the distinction of the two, it's how much transparency do you want versus are you comfortable with none, and know that going in advance. And I think the second point I'd like to make is if you have a lead-based product, so you're relying on a data that you're going to call upon, be very, very hesitant to get started, and definitely you're going to want to check out a company like a FraudLogix where you at least can know in advance is this data sort of real, because there's an incredible marketplace out there of people going to Amazon Turk and getting people to go fill out forms from phone books, and before you know it, you'll get all these names that seem valid. You'll start trying to call upon them, and nothing's going to happen. So a commerce-based solution for affiliate marketing is a little less risk. There's always still fraudsters than if you have a data product.
Well, and just quickly, you hear about the 80-20 rule where 20% of your people are doing 80% of your business. In affiliate marketing, it's 2% of your affiliates are doing 98% of the business. So the question is, do you engage with the thousands, or can you somehow find the 2% somehow? And I think for you guys especially, if you can find those relationships, maybe you start with a broader net, but you start to narrow it down into the people that you're really doing business with. And that gets to eliminating some of that fraud, because you start to work with only people you trust and people that you rely on to do great business for you. And those are also the kinds of relationships that are going to expand your business exponentially, because all those guys have friends and they have friends, and it starts to really snowball.
I mean, the thing that I will sort of harp upon is you have these channels that we've talked about that are really mature. Search, affiliate, incredibly mature channels, very competitive, easy to enter because they have sort of self-service mechanisms. And then you have the brand new channels, whether it's like Pinterest. And we look at a lot of the great success stories. They're not insane. There's nothing necessarily that would set one person up for success, other than they were really early and willing to take the risk to figure out the platform. So we think about a Twitter or a Pinterest. It's not necessarily I'd spend a lot of time on some of these emerging platforms. If you have exotic flowers, I'd say, sure, you're probably going to want an affiliate program. But unless you had some special competitive edge, we know how to get this one bouquet at this flower, we have some business model advantage, then you could use search and you could use affiliate. But if you're just, this is sort of your business, I'd go and say, flowers, incredibly visual. There's, we're going to go to Pinterest where it's visual and there isn't this defined marketplace. And before you know it, you hear all these, brands talking about how now Pinterest is the number 2 or 3 driver of their traffic. It's all unpaid. And so I guess I couldn't stress enough the sort of the new unpaid big markets. And I mean, I don't know if Adam, if the term native advertising is, you're hearing it a lot, but all of these, figuring out Tumblr, figuring out.
Sounds to me like inbound.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's kind of the opposite of paid, but you're making it, you're figuring out the effort because no one has figured out the tricks 100%.
So to that, maybe we'll see first of all if there's any questions from the audience we can take here on any of these kind of ways to drive traffic, cost effectively to your kind of domains that you're potentially looking to build out, or if there's any other kind of traffic acquisition questions that we didn't cover that maybe some people would like to ask.
I also have one quick question too, just from the audience, of who is actually trying to develop a domain, like really develop them into, okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, on the traffic acquisition side, there's 2 products that people mention all the time, Unbounce and Optimizely. I've probably said those before. Everyone loves those in terms of, great, we want to do simple landing pages, A/B testing. One, you're doing kind of on Unbounce, you're creating landing pages from templates that they have, and you're able to create 2 versions. With Optimizely, you have sort of this kind of editor that overlays your existing site and allows you to screw with your existing site without having to mess with any of the actual code. But both of those tend to be sort of supremely helpful starting points for anyone that's building out an offer, since at the end of the day, it really is about the clicks and then the actions on the site.
Yeah, I think that's crucial, because whether you're going for native advertising or you're paying for Facebook or you're paying for Ad Marketplace or Google, you're putting some time and effort and resources into getting the traffic to your site. So we see it all the time. When you have brands who've spent the time to do the A/B testing, to have the flow, and they know what to do with the user once they get them, their conversion rates will be orders of magnitude higher than advertisers who come in through our self-serve system who aren't as expert and experienced in these things. So you got to start with having your own messaging, your offer matching up with your messaging, the placement, and having a flawless, seamless, fast sign-up process, or else everything we're talking about here is useless.
So some good competitive research sites for that kind of stuff, figuring out what that message and that sort of thing is going to be, what runs where is really great. Right now, they've opened up their mobile placements too, so you can see what their actual, what competitors are running.
Is that you guys?
Mobile banners? No.
No? Oh, okay. Oh, I thought it was for some reason.
Yeah, what runs where, and MixRank is a competitor to them, which is kind of a similar thing. And they're both kind of like younger, like fastly growing companies, but they cover a lot of the competitive market, especially in display. So if you're wanting to really dabble in that and see what works in your niche, you might even get some ideas from that on developing your domain in general.
And on the search side, I'd throw in SpyFu, AdGuru, Compete is pretty solid. And yeah, I mean, you've got to see what your competitors are doing, borrow some ideas from them, and follow the leaders and try to find a place where you can carve out your own niche.
Yeah, and I hate saying this exact same thing, but once you're dealing with paid media, you're dealing in direct response, you're dealing now with a whole different animal of metrics game. So your mindset sort of has to change into the every step of the funnel and every metric of the funnel that you can sort of tweak. Because if I can, if you make $1 more, it allows you to pay some percentage of that for more traffic, and that becomes sort of this virtuous cycle. So it really is a metrics-focused initiative.
So I think we've all talked about the different, oh, was there a question? Perfect. Right.
We're spending in the neighborhood of 15,000 a day on pay-per-click at one of our companies, but we're not doing a lot of retargeting. Is there an agency or a group of agencies that really know the retargeting business specifically? And how many, second question is, how many retargeting platforms would you say there are in the market that are worth going to if you're spending the big bucks?
I mean, there's probably 50 plus retargeting companies. I think we each know some different ones just from our own interactions, so the two that come to my name, or, and even Google offers it for you, but retargeter.com and Trigit, Triggit, are two that I've come across who are, they sort of focus only in this retargeting space.
AdRoll is really strong. They've got a nice UI, and they're good at blacklisting domains you don't want to get stuff from.
Yeah, we just spent about a month and a half at our agency analyzing and really looking at these different platforms and DSPs, and we settled on Trade Desk. We think it's great. Trigit, they have access to FBX, which not everybody does, so if that's something you're interested in, they're one of the few.
You can always go to Terry Kawaja's Lumascape at Luma Partners, and he's got the entire digital ecosystem on about 5 different slides. So that's always a nice menu of options from a vendor perspective.
And so one thing I think we've all alluded to in the different channels we haven't necessarily specifically addressed is, if I was to throw out the question, okay, how does this change, or does it change at all if we're talking about mobile? Are there, when we talked about yesterday, was that, hey, a lot of overseas, for example, and a lot of domains are seeing, big ramp up in mobile, but a lot of this, whether it's retargeting, whether it's, display, whether it's affiliate, is it pretty much same thing on mobile? Are the economics a lot different?
The conversion rates are a lot different.
Yep.
So we spend a lot of time on that because it's the fastest growing traffic source in our network. I think it's tripled on a percentage basis in the last 6 months for us, and we expect it to continue to do that over the next 6 months. So we just rolled out in a way that actually Google just copied today, so I'm excited, where you can take your keyword bids and then apply a multiplier to it based on the, in our case, it's an operating system or the specific mobile device. And what we have found is that the conversion rates on tablets are very similar to desktop, 95, 96%. You go down to mobile phones, and the conversion rates really vary by phone. It actually has a lot to do with screen size. The larger the screen size, the better the conversion rates. Probably some of that is because of the fat finger effect, that people are clicking on ads they don't mean to on small screens. But be that as it may, here's another chance for you to use your metrics. You need to bid down when you're finding mobile devices and types that are not performing as well for you. Is the traffic valuable? Yeah, it is. But it's not as valuable necessarily as a tablet or a desktop. So we've built that into our advertiser 3D system where you can do that. Google today announced that they're not going to be allowing keyword level bidding by device type anymore. They're going to move to the multiplier as well. It's causing some consternation, but I think it's probably the right way to go. And we're in a mobile world. We're seeing more and more traffic move over there, and it needs to be priced correctly.
I mean, Peter, you know a lot. The one thing I would just say is that it's also super exciting. Let's say you have a business where you're like an info marketer, or you have a product where people can answer the phones and can convert the customer. I think then mobile becomes supremely exciting because now it's sort of frictionless to get inbound calls. And now that mobile sort of hit this threshold of usage, you can start to have real meaningful tap to call, and it becomes arguably maybe even higher in certain cases quality user because you're getting them when they need it, when they want it. And so now there's like a company called Datalot, and they have, for a lot of the local service providers, can bid and buy calls the same way that they might buy a click, which really couldn't have had happen without sort of the mobile. And it's sort of irrespective of are they in an app or on a mobile search.
Well, and there's an incredible amount of remnant inventory on mobile right now. You can get traffic very, very cheap because literally people don't know what to do with it. They just got it spare, and they don't They're not sending it to the right spot for monetization. I would guess that probably a high percentage of you guys have mobile users up to upwards of 30% on your domains, and you may not be monetizing them very well. You may not be sharing them around very well, and they may not even be coming to a responsive web design. So they're just pinching and squeezing on your parked page, and it's terrible. So you can imagine, because of this transition in infrastructure, basically, there's just a lot of remnant inventory that you can buy really cheap. There are ad networks popping up everywhere right now in mobile that just are exclusive to mobile users. We've seen 7 or 8 funded by VCs in the Valley over the last 6 months. I'm talking $40 to $70 million rounds. So they're growing very quickly. Obviously mobile apps are a great place to monetize those things. Obviously, something that really encompasses a nice user experience for the mobile device is going to work well. But there's lots of people to buy from. So if you want to get into that, there's certainly inventory.
What about in social? Is Facebook or Twitter doing anything specifically around mobile as well that's cheaper, or like you said, is it built on the same kind of platform that you're able to do like Facebook ads on or things like that?
Yeah, it's built on the same Facebook ads manager. However, right now the only ads that they'll serve on mobile devices are like sponsored stories. So that's more about engagement and community management and reaching your already existing audience within Facebook. So not necessarily.
Well, actually, and they launched a new program called Facebook Mobile App Ads Program. So you will see in your feed mobile apps being promoted, mobile games. You'll see dating apps. You'll see the whole gamut. Sends you right into the iTunes store to download something. We're the preferred measurement partner for that program, and it's it has very high conversion rates, like startling. So.
But to back Mary up, it is interesting that both Twitter and Facebook, to some extent, have gone the brand promotion route for their mobile strategy, and I think that's interesting that they've done that. It might be a good move for them, but to Peter's point, there's certainly direct response opportunities in mobile. We're running a huge campaign with a major tax preparation firm, and you would be shocked to know how many people are doing their taxes, filing their taxes from their mobile device. And it certainly can and should be a place to look for direct response.
Good.
I think you should watch Twitter very carefully in the next 6 months as to what they do in mobile advertising.
I mean, we think about the Super Bowl. I mean, there were no URLs anymore. I mean, it was 90% of the commercials all had hashtags. It's truly remarkable.
So I think the holy grail of all traffic acquisition is obviously to not spend any money on it. And so I know we've talked a lot about the paid methods, and I think Jay, you alluded to some other methods that are ways that you could try to drive traffic without having to spend money on it. Maybe if each of you could talk about some other ways that you think might be, like you said, nascent, or even one that's not so nascent but is very effective is email. I know maybe in the domain space, email isn't a huge acquisition channel, but once you have that email, you're able to message that user over and over again and get them back to your site or convert on your offers. So maybe starting with email, but other ones as well. Are there other, is email an effective channel to be able to use to kind of drive traffic, and can it be done? I know Facebook offers kind of email targeting as well, but if any of you had some experience using email as kind of a traffic acquisition channel or to get repeat users back on their sites.
We have email in our network. It converts fantastic. I don't know that it's really growing by leaps and bounds at this point. It seems like it's a little bit of a dinosaur.
Yep.
One that hasn't been mentioned yet, which I think if we were on this panel 5 years ago, we'd all be, it'd be probably in the title, is SEO.
Yep.
It's been declared dead many times, and it's now not even being discussed. So I think Google's done a really nice job of monetizing their entire.
Yeah, we had a panel this morning on SEO.
Okay, all right. Well, but it's still, it's been the lifeblood of a lot of businesses, and
Sure.
I think it's, And I think that what you've seen in the SEO world is what you're going to see at other places as well, is that you can only stay with earned media so long. At some point, you've got to go to paid in order to build a sustainable long-term business. And that's, there's pros and cons to that. But, the pro of paid is that when you wake up in the morning, the traffic will have been there. And if, nothing broke on your back end, then the conversions will be there too. So, it's always great to be the first on Pinterest or wherever you might be. And that's fantastic. But at some point, Twitter, Facebook, all these places, you're going to have to move to the paid model.
I think I think it kind of can go both ways. The inbound can then feed your, building out an advertising strategy, or sometimes the advertising strategy can help to build your inbound. And that's something, internally as a business to business company, it's all about thought leadership for us, right? It's all about developing great content that people see, that we know, this stuff is, we know what we're talking about. We're leaders in the industry. And most of our paid advertising in a B2B sense is about getting people to engage with us on our content and not convert at all. We actually don't care if they do. And we have a budget to spend to make sure that those people just hang around and become our buddies. And I think you're seeing that across a lot of B2B organizations. Of course you see it in big brands who are willing to pay for engagements that are not purchases. They're willing to pay for likes, or they're willing to pay for anything else. So I think these strategies, they play hand in hand, and you can kind of use paid advertising to kind of put your foot on the gas just a little bit more and kind of push it up maybe into a place where it gets some real sharing quality.
Right. To build off Peter's point, Facebook, being on Facebook and sharing content from your site with your fans, and Twitter and, Instagram, if, your product or your service is very visually rich. By no means is that free. Nothing's free. It all takes time, and you should be very good at it.
Yeah.
But
looking like a good agent.
But like he said, you kind of want to make them your friends, your audience, because your audience will promote you themselves if they like who you are as a brand. Another way to get some traffic or leads would be, and again, this isn't free, but StumbleUpon, really cheap. And I say that with a caveat because those users get really angry and pissed off if they sense that, it's a paid stumble. So it has to look really engaging. It has to actually be valuable to the people who are stumbling it, because if it looks spammy, and if it looks like all you want to do is sell to them, they're going to hate you for it. Well,
I think overall the user is becoming more educated, and they have more banner blindness. They are more annoyed when they think they're being sold something they don't want. And so across all channels, paid, inbound, brand advertising, we're having to deal with that.
I'm a huge fan of email, though. I think the tools for email are incredibly advanced, at least in terms of being able to set up a dialogue with the users. And we think of some of the, even the hottest companies today, email is where they make most of their money. We think about the fabs to, whether it's Best Buy, it's great. I need to have a way to have an engagement with a user, and then I need to have a way to send them something. And right now, there still is nothing better. So, I absolutely, if you're having any sort of site and there isn't some notion of a capture, I think it's definitely you're sort of missing out on a chance to have, essentially a free chance to sell them without having to buy them again.
Got it. Well, I think that's pretty much all the time we have, but I'd like to thank the panelists, Jay, Peter, Mary, and Adam, for talking to us on paid, and thank everyone for joining us for this session. I think Corinne might have some housekeeping.
I do. Give me a mic.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all very much for attending the panel. At 4 o'clock, the moniker auction will begin, and please remember that we have a wonderful dinner tonight at the California Science Center under the Space Shuttle. The buses to get to the California Science Center are you're going to have to line up outside of the ballroom, just in the foyer. We start to board people at 6:30. The boarding process is from 6:30 to 7:15, and you'll have a great time.